Order the regular meeting of the Council of Community Schools for February 27th. Mrs. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Mitchell?
Present.
Mr. McGlade?
Present.
Mr. Kazire?
Present.
Mr. LaFurla?
Present.
Mr. Grove?
Here.
And Mr. Arthur?
Present. Please join me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you all. And now I need a move approval of our agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval of our agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And the agenda is approved. Now we need approval of minutes from workshop meeting of February 13th. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the workshop meeting minutes, February 13th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this? No? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. And the minutes are approved. Now we come to the public participation portion of the meeting. I have we had a little comment thing here, which I kind of like, actually. I guess, first of all, just thank you for all coming out. We appreciate the opportunity to get to hear what anyone comes and says to the board. Typically, boards operate in front of about, most of the meetings about probably 2 or 3 people and mostly board staff, mostly the district staff. Now I realize that a lot of you probably are district staff. So thank you for coming out today. We have, I believe there's 5 folks who've indicated interest in addressing the board. Others will be asked if they would like to address the board after that. But we'll start with these 5. And I know that, I'm guessing most of this is on the collective bargaining. And you may find it helpful to know that the process for negotiating with the CWA chapter has started, but only with the opening statements. As has been the case for many years in the school district, the negotiation teams will bargain in good faith and in accordance with Chapter 20 requirements. Anyone wanting to address the board will come up to the podium, state your name and your address. Each participant gets 3 minutes time, and typically we will stop you right at that to allow others to speak. Is Missy Rowe available? So even though I said your name, please step up, say your name, and
My name's Missy Rowe. My address is 3119 10th Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the CWA. Our contract doesn't have to be wiped out. There's permissibles that could all be left in there, but for some reason, with the Chapter 20 changes, the district, or you guys, the board who proposed, wants to take everything out, and we would like the permissibles left in. Our employees, they value their job. And they want to work here, but they want protection too. So we'd just like you to think about that.
thank you. Steve Gorman?
Good evening. My name is Steve Gorman, 203 Fifth Avenue here in Council Bluffs. I'm here tonight as a concerned citizen and also a Democratic candidate for the Iowa House of Representatives. I'm going to discuss and hope to offer to you an opportunity to soften the short-sightedness of our legislature's actions last year at the Iowa House of decimating Chapter 20. As a public employee myself, a firefighter here in Council Bluffs, I have benefited my adult life with the negotiations of Chapter 20 and its permissibles. As a firefighter, we weren't hit as hard as the public employees across the state. We were exempted out in many ways, but I stand here today in support of those employees who put as much time and as much energy and put themselves at as much risk as I do as a firefighter. I see Chapter 20 and its permissibles and its collective bargaining as a safety incentive for your school. When you have long-term employees from the custodial level to the superintendent's level, you have familiar faces in the buildings. That's the front line to a threat to your building. They know their building, they know the kids in the building, they know their teachers and staff, and they know when something's not right. And I say to you tonight, we can't correct what the Iowa legislatures have done, but you can honor Chapter 20, put the permissibles back in for your employees, and give them a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. It's morally and ethically the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. John Holven.
My name is John Holben. I live at 225 Kings Ridge Drive. I want to begin by thanking each of you for what you do for our kids and for the community of Council Bluffs and the Council Bluffs School District. You've stepped up to, maybe it's because you have the loudest mouth or something and somebody thought that you should do this, but you're in a role of leadership and you're an important part of the school district. And there's other parts as well that are important within the school district, and some of those are our teachers and those workers that are in the CWA that have opened their local negotiations, and it is on their behalf that I stand up tonight to speak. There are things in the contract that can be negotiated. There are things that only have to be negotiated. The one that only has to be negotiated is base pay, their pay. But it was, I hate to assume, but it would be my assumption of each of you on the board that it would be your desire of all that part of any administration within the school district, any teachers within the school district, any employees within the school district, and definitely any students within the school district, that they would always strive to do more than what is just needed, that they would work a little harder and do all that they can do. And I think that it would be a good example to set by the board to allow those things that have been discussed in the past and negotiated in good faith in the past to be continued to be discussed and negotiated and settled in good faith as they have been in the past. It would be a good example that sometimes it's best, and it's all times, it's good to go beyond what you just have to do and do all that you can do. And so that's, again, what I'm asking you tonight as a board, to consider this and to instruct your negotiators that it is okay to put those allowables back in there. And I thank you again for your service as school board members and your service to the Council Bluffs School District. And by doing this, it's my hope, and that the same as yours, I'm assuming again, that the Council Bluffs School District becomes one of the finest school districts within the state. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott, I don't know actually how to say your last name, but Putney. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Scott Putney, 4105 Gladbrook. And I came here today to speak in support of the school district employees. I'm not sure the format here, if I can ask you a question, but I would love to kind of a follow-up from your original statement. You talked about the school board entered negotiations with CWA. Has it also entered into negotiations with SEIU? Is there, it has, and that's just the initial proposal exchange as well? Is that what's happened? Okay, thank you for the clarification. I wasn't 100% sure, so thank you for that. So, like I said, I'm here today speaking for our district's employees. They're dedicated individuals who provide high-quality services throughout our schools and throughout our district. Last year, the Iowa legislature made sweeping changes to the law and dramatically reduced the list of workplace issues public employers are required to negotiate with employees. A few topics like health insurance are now prohibited and can't be introduced or can't be included in the contract. But all other topics covered by contractual agreements are still legal to negotiate, and they are legal to be included in the final contracts. Recently, the district opened negotiations, as you had stated, and the district has proposed to eliminate all these other, what they call permissive or allowable subjects from the contract. Many of these issues are not monetary or not economical. These issues are about respect, about respecting your employees, about having transparent procedures that the employees can rely on. Moving these items into handbooks or as a policy is not a solution. Handbooks and contracts are not the same. Handbooks are not legally binding and can be followed, they can be altered, they can be deleted, they can be they can be changed in any way without the employee having any word as to what's being having any recourse by the employee at all. So today, I want to make sure that it's clear that you know that you have the power to do what's right. You have the power to change this. If you truly wish to take care of the district's employees, why would we be removing these topics from the contract? What's the point
30
of
seconds,
removing
Mr.
them from the
Putney.
contract? What's that?
30 seconds.
Okay. Real quick, so I'll wrap it up. Stripping them of their rights is not the way to show that you want to take care of them. I'm asking you today, please, to instruct your negotiating team to withdraw their proposal and to negotiate over all allowable topics and to include them in the final contract. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now we have, is it Jeff, is it Shudak?
Good evening, guys. Jeff Shudak, 120 Ivy Drive, third generation union member. I also work for local plumbers, 16, Omaha, Nebraska. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the school board tonight on behalf of the CWA. Last year, the state legislature stripped many of the rights of the public municipality employees. They have been penalized enough and should be allowed to negotiate the permissible items the two parties can negotiate on. This would give the workers some restored dignity and security. This gesture also shows that the school board cares and has the best interest in their employees. It is totally illegal to negotiate the permissible items if both sides agree. You would not be reinventing the wheel, as several school boards and city councils have made these provisions already this year. We'll be educating and trying to help as many people as we can on this subject and won't go away lightly. I know from the bottom of my heart that you will do the right thing for our most prized assets of the school district, our workers. Once again, thank you guys for your service. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so that is the end of the folks who have requested to speak, but anyone else who's here is free to come up and speak for 3 minutes as well. Is there anyone who would like to talk? Okay. And I would say, as a, so you all know, the intent of negotiations on our side is always to come up with, I think, a better district every year. You know, I think school districts are trying to, kind of reeling from the effects of the legislation and the changes, trying to figure out how do we be fair? And I think to a certain extent, how do we have consistency among our contracts? And that's something that over time, I mean, I know that removal of the language probably seems crazy and scary. But I also think that sometimes we've had times when certain unions got better deals than others. And I think that when we thought about this, I think maybe that was a starting place for us. It's just how do you have some consistency? I think that is why a lot of groups are looking at handbooks and things as a way to develop a policy where all employees are rewarded somewhat equally or benefit equally. But that's my own personal opinion. And if there's no one else who wishes to speak, which I'll give you a second time, we will now close the public participation portion of the meeting. And thank you to Missy, Steve, John, Scott, and Jeff. We will take your points under advisement. The board doesn't actually see, we will meet to discuss things, but we have a negotiation team, so we allow to do their jobs on that side and work with your representatives to come up with a mutual plan that works. So thank you. We will now move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. Arthur. This evening, we have our sub-state final game at Iowa Western Community College. So we will not have a report. We'll move right on into resolutions this evening.
Okay.
I guess I should also say with the
That's
hope
you.
that we will be able to get out and support our team.
You bet.
So what we did send out in the board packet was the first reading of the policies. And as you see them listed there before you, I guess it's a time for us to have a discussion if there was any concerns that the board had on the first readings.
Well, we need to, yeah.
I move
the
that we
motion.
approve the first reading of the following policies. 217, Board of Directors Meeting Agenda Format. Policy 501, School Attendance Areas. Policy 505, Protection of Pupil Rights. Policy 511, Student Discipline, Suspension, and Expulsion. Policy 514, Student Immunization. Policy 515, Special Health Services. And finally, Policy 516, Exclusion of Communicable Diseases.
Thank you, Mr. Kazire. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion on these?
Yeah, I guess this was more just like a point of clarification. The only change that I really saw was just in the format of the board meetings, correct? There wasn't.
Yeah, and Diane maybe can explain kind of how this review cycle works a little bit.
Are you asking about none of the other board documents changed?
Yeah, more
just
the-
this? Okay, so the first one is the board agenda policy that outlines the agenda that we're actually experiencing right now. But since the board has moved to the regular meeting and workshop meeting format to conduct its business, we felt like the policy should be in line with that, and this reflects those changes.
And then the rest of it is more, we have a regular review of our policies that come up at certain times. And is it what's the requirement?
We are required every 5 years to review the policies or as needed. And so these reflect the policies due for review under that 5-year cycle. And you can see some of them have no changes or very little changes recommended. But we are presenting these to you for your approval.
Okay.
On a first reading, we'll bring them back next month.
Yeah. Was there any questions on any of these changes in here? I noticed the Board of Directors meeting agenda format, was that just literally to align our new format with that? Is that restrictive in any way in case we want to have student recognition another time or?
No. It shouldn't be because we have the right to change it. It's just that in policy, we're now demonstrating to the community that we have a workshop model, which is an extended time with a lot of discussion and going deep. And then we have a business meeting that's about the approval of resolutions and consent items.
It's also so that we don't get demerits for not having policies that actually look like what we're doing.
Correct.
So
Correct.
we get those comments from time to time saying, well, your policy looks different than what you're actually doing. So this is important so that we're aligned with what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
I had one question. On policy 514, the immunization, we give parents and students the ability to have an exclusion for immunizations based on religious and health medical reasons. What do we do for those students to protect them if we do have an outbreak in one of the school buildings? How do we protect those students that don't have the immunizations? Do we allow them not to come to school, or how do we protect them in that case where there may be an outbreak?
Well, we've been very fortunate in the 3 years or 2.5 years that I've been here. We haven't had any of these issues come up. But when we've had, I think this year we had possible chickenpox. So that's exactly what we do is we reach out to all the kids. We have the system is very easy to navigate to determine who doesn't have the immunizations, and we reach out to the families and let them know. They can choose not to send their kid to school, but knowing that that's an excused absence, so it's not like an exempt absence.
Right, okay,
Good point.
okay.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Hamilton.
Any further questions or discussion from the board? What's that? Chris made the second. All right, well, then, Diane, go ahead and please call the roll for approval of the first reading.
I'm going to do this on paper because this one doesn't have a way to vote.
Okay. All right,
I think Dean did that to me on purpose.
yeah.
See if you can navigate.
Okay, all right. Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Binshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes, and the first reading of the policies is approved. Now we need a resolution to set a public hearing date for consideration and approval of the 2018-2019 budget. Is there a motion?
I move to authorize and direct the secretary to give notice of a public hearing to consider and approve the 2018-2019 budget to be held at the ESC offices, 300 West Broadway, Suite 16, Council Bluffs, Iowa, at 6:30 p.m. on March 27th.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion on this? Pretty straightforward. All right, Diane?
All right, Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
and Mr. Arthur.
Yes. And the resolution to set a public hearing date for consideration approval of our budget has passed. And now we run into, oh, there is a now,
There it is.
electronic
A
voting.
little slow.
Okay. This is a new process for us too, folks, somewhat. Okay, now we move to our consent agenda. Consent agenda includes summary practicum students, also a list of all of our students. Currently doing teaching and field experience and student teachers, special education contracts, personal agenda, purchasing card transactions, January financial report, and check and ACH payments. Is there a motion?
I move approval of our consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Is there any discussion on any of the items? Kyle looks like he's feverishly going through it. No? Okay. All right. Diane, please call the roll.
Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Arthur.
Yes, and the consent agenda is approved. Now, since we have a basketball game, and we're all going to cheer on AL as they go down this road towards state, we're adjourned. Thank you all. And you're all invited if you want to go to, it's at Iowa Western.
Don't tell anybody.
I forgot one button. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay, that's right.
And the board action line's coming out late tonight, sorry.